The night before the wedding felt unreal to Emily Carter, as if time had slowed down just to test her heart, and she stood alone in her hotel room in Boston, looking out at the city lights that blinked like quiet witnesses to her thoughts. The white dress hanging nearby reminding her that by this time tomorrow her life would officially change, yet instead of excitement her chest felt tight with emotions she could not name, because big moments often wake up old memories, and tonight those memories refused to stay silent. Emily had always believed she had made peace with her past, especially with Michael Reed, the man she once loved deeply before life pulled them in different directions. But as the night grew quieter, his name returned to her mind without warning, not loudly, but gently, like a familiar song she had not heard in years, and she tried to push it away by checking messages from friends and family in the US and Canada, all sending love and excitement, all reminding her how lucky she was to be marrying Daniel Brooks, a good man, a steady man, someone who chose her every single day without hesitation. Yet even that thought brought a strange ache, not doubt, but reflection, because love does not erase the past, it only builds on it. Emily paced the room, replaying moments from years ago when she and Michael were younger and hopeful, when dreams felt endless and promises felt easy, when they talked about futures that never happened, not because of betrayal, but because of fear and timing. And she reminded herself that those days were over, that she had grown, that she had chosen a different path, one built on trust and consistency. And still, as midnight approached, her hands trembled slightly, her heart sensing something before her mind could understand it. Then came the knock, soft but clear, cutting through the silence and pulling her back to the present, and for a brief second she wondered if it was a mistake or a hotel staff member, but something about the moment felt heavy, meaningful, and when she opened the door, 3 unfamiliar men stood there calmly, not threatening, not rude, just serious in a way that made her breath catch. And when one of them spoke her name gently, she felt the world tilt because she knew, deep down, that this moment was connected to the part of her heart she had been trying not to touch. And as they explained, they were there to deliver something meant only for her, something sent with care and intention. Emily felt the weight of the night settle fully on her shoulders, realizing that the night before her wedding was no longer just about preparing for tomorrow, but about facing yesterday. And as she stood there listening, the city humming quietly behind her, she understood that whatever waited beyond that door would change the way she stepped into her future, not by stopping her, but by making her finally confront what she had never fully closed. And in that single moment, with the clock moving closer to morning, Emily knew this night was not an accident, but a turning point, one that would ask her to be honest with herself before she promised her life to someone else. Emily stood frozen in the doorway as the 3 men faced her with calm expressions, and even before they spoke again, she felt a strange certainty settle in her chest, the kind that comes when the past suddenly steps into the present without warning. And the first man introduced himself simply and respectfully, explaining that they were not there to cause trouble or ask anything from her, only to deliver what had been entrusted to them, and his careful tone made it clear that whoever sent them had thought deeply about this moment, which only made Emily's heart beat faster, because thoughtfulness had always been Michael's quiet strength. The man closest to her held out a folded letter, sealed but worn at the edges as if it had been opened and closed many times, and when Emily took it, her fingers brushed the paper and she recognized the handwriting instantly, a sharp rush of memory flooding her senses, her mind racing back to late nights when Michael used to write her notes instead of calling, believing words meant more when they were written by hand. And for a moment she forgot to breathe, the room around her fading as the weight of that letter pressed against her palm. Before she could open it, the second man stepped forward and offered a small box, explaining quietly that it was something Michael had once meant to give back but never found the right moment. And when Emily lifted the lid, her throat tightened as she saw the silver necklace resting inside, simple and familiar, the same style she had lost years ago during a move, a piece she once believed was gone forever, just like that chapter of her life. And the sight of it stirred a mix of comfort and sadness that settled deep in her chest. The third man remained still until the others stepped back, and when he finally spoke, his words carried a careful honesty, telling Emily that Michael was not nearby, not watching, not waiting for a reaction, because he did not want to interfere with her choice or disturb her peace on such an important night. And that detail alone hurt more than any dramatic confession could have, because it showed how much Michael had changed, how he had finally learned restraint, the very thing he once lacked. Emily invited none of them inside, yet the hallway felt like a bridge between two versions of her life. And as they explained that Michael had chosen them because he trusted they would speak with respect and leave without expectation, she realized this was not an attempt to pull her back but a final act of honesty, a closing of a door that had been left slightly open for far too long. When the men finished speaking, they gave her space, and Emily stood there alone with the letter, the necklace, and the echo of Michael's presence. And once the door closed softly behind them, the quiet felt heavier than before, pressing in as she leaned against it and slowly slid down to the floor, her emotions moving faster than her thoughts. She opened the letter with trembling hands and read words filled with regret, growth, and truth. Words that admitted mistakes without blaming time or circumstances. Words that acknowledged love without demanding it in return. And as she read, Emily felt tears form, not because she wanted Michael back, but because she finally felt seen, understood in a way only someone who once knew her deeply could manage. The letter spoke of missed chances and lessons learned too late, of watching her move forward while he stood still, of realizing that love should not be delayed until it is convenient. And as Emily read the final lines, she felt a strange calm settle in her heart, a realization that closure does not always come from forgetting, but from understanding. And she sat there for a long moment, holding the necklace in one hand and the letter in the other, aware that the night before her wedding had turned into something far more meaningful than nervous excitement, because it had given her the one thing she did not know she still needed, the chance to face her past honestly, without anger, without longing, just truth. And as the clock moved closer to morning, Emily knew this moment would stay with her forever, not as temptation or regret, but as proof that she had loved deeply once, grown stronger from it, and was now ready to step forward without unanswered questions holding her back. Emily sat on the carpet with her back against the bed, the letter resting in her hands as if it carried weight beyond paper, and she read it again slowly, not because she missed the meaning, but because each line settled deeper into her heart, and the words did not beg or demand. They simply told the truth of a man who had finally understood himself too late. And as she read, memories moved quickly through her mind, not in detail but in feeling, reminding her of who she once was and how far she had come. Michael wrote about fear, about choosing comfort over risk, about believing love would wait while life was sorted out, and Emily felt no anger reading those lines, only a quiet sadness, because she had once stood on the other side of that fear, waiting, hoping, trusting, until waiting became too heavy, and she had chosen to move forward instead. She folded the letter carefully and placed it beside her, then held the necklace in her palm, letting its cool surface ground her as she stood and walked to the mirror, studying her reflection not as a bride or someone torn between two men, but as a woman shaped by experience. And for the first time that night, she felt steady. She thought of Daniel, asleep somewhere nearby, trusting her, loving her without conditions or hesitation, and that thought brought warmth rather than guilt, because she realized that love built on honesty does not fear the past. It respects it. Emily understood then that what she felt was not confusion about who to choose, but release from a chapter that had never properly ended, and the understanding softened something inside her, allowing her to breathe freely. She sat on the edge of the bed and let the tears come, not dramatic or overwhelming, just quiet tears of acceptance, because grief does not always mean loss, sometimes it means growth. And when the tears stopped, she felt lighter, as if a long-held question had finally been answered. She picked up her phone when it buzzed with a message from an unknown number, and though she already knew who it was from, her heart did not race. It stayed calm as she read the short message, wishing her peace. And in that moment she realized how much both of them had changed, because the man who once struggled to speak honestly was now offering space instead of promises. Emily typed her reply slowly, choosing words that felt true, not dramatic, not final, just honest. And when she sent it, she felt no pull to say more, no need to reopen doors, because closure does not require long conversations, only clarity. She lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling as the night moved forward, thinking about how love can be meaningful even when it does not last, how some people enter our lives to teach us courage, and others to give us peace, and understanding that both kinds of love are valid, even if they come at different times. As sleep finally approached, Emily knew she would walk into her wedding not carrying secrets or doubts, but carrying the full truth of her story, and that truth gave her strength, because she was no longer defined by what could have been, but by what she had chosen, and with that quiet certainty settling into her heart, she closed her eyes, ready for the morning, ready for the future, and grateful that the night before her wedding had given her understanding instead of regret. Morning arrived gently, with soft light slipping through the curtains and waking Emily before her alarm, and for the first time in days her chest felt calm instead of heavy, as if the night had quietly arranged her thoughts while she slept, and as she sat up, the events of the night returned to her mind not as confusion or pain, but as clarity, allowing her to move forward without hesitation. She showered, dressed, and greeted her bridesmaids with a warm smile that surprised even her, because it came easily. And as they talked and laughed, Emily felt present, not distracted, fully aware of the choice she was making. And when the time came to put on her dress, she looked at her reflection and saw confidence instead of doubt, knowing that love should feel safe and chosen, not questioned. The ceremony space filled with guests from across the United States and Canada, friends and family who had watched her grow, and when the music began and Emily walked forward, her steps were steady, her heart open, and her eyes met Daniel's, filled with emotion and trust, reminding her why she had said yes without fear. And as they stood together, exchanging vows spoken with honesty and promise, Emily felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought her there. The words they shared were simple but meaningful, built on respect and commitment rather than ideal dreams, and as they promised to choose each other every day, Emily understood that real love does not compete with the past, it honors it and moves forward. When they were pronounced married, joy spread through the room, and Emily felt grounded, aware that happiness can be quiet and strong at the same time. Later, as laughter filled the reception and music played, Emily stepped outside briefly to breathe in the evening air, reflecting on how the night before had not shaken her future, but strengthened it. And somewhere far away, Michael watched the same sky, accepting that love sometimes means stepping back, and that growth comes from letting go with respect. Emily returned to the celebration carrying no regret, only gratitude for lessons learned and chapters closed, knowing that the night before her wedding had not been about temptation or drama, but about understanding herself fully. And as she held Daniel's hand and joined the people she loved, she felt peace settle deeply within her, confident that the life she was beginning was chosen freely, honestly, and with a heart finally at rest.